Hello, friends, and welcome back to another episode of Conservation Stories. This is your host, Tillery Timmons-Sims, here again. And Conservation Stories is a podcast brought to you by the Sandhill Area Research Association, SARA. We, as you know, love to feature people that are doing great things across the High Plains, and we've got some repeat guests now that we've been around for about a year. Todd Baughman is back again with us, and we're going to talk some more about what's happening out at the AgriLife Research Center out there just north of the airport.
Just north of the airport.
Mm-hmm. So people will remember it wasn't too many episodes ago that we were catching up with you on your new position out there, which isn't too new anymore. But you came after J. Roy Moore retired, and we talked some about what the goals are for those centers that are across Texas. And so I'd like for us to dig down and do a little more on specific things that are going on out there and research that I think people will be interested in learning about, because this is our tax dollars at work in some cases, but also your land grant university. So some of it is actually even mineral money.
Yes.
Coming from oil and gas. So anyway, so give us a little overview, and you just start wherever you want, Todd.
Well, I mean, obviously, we're the same as the producers in the area. It's been a blessing of a summer so far, both the rainfall and the temperatures. I think we've maybe 2 or 3 days that hit 100 so far this summer. So, and I was telling people even last week, because this week obviously is the first really, I guess, continuous high temperatures that we've had all summer, which again is a plus. But if you look at our nighttime temperatures are still holding cooler compared to last year. And I think that's a big key when we get hot is what those nighttime temperatures, because giving that plant some rest in the evening, which last year, that 3 weeks in August, we didn't have. And I think that was the nighttime temperatures were as big a detriment as those 100 degrees during the day.
Yeah. That's interesting. And, for folks that maybe aren't plant enthusiast, give us a little bit of why is that important for those plants?
So basically, if it stays hot at night, well, during that heat during the day, that plant has to transpire basically just like we sweat, if you think of it that way. And so that's how it cools itself off. Well, a lot of times at night, if it cools off, it doesn't have to stay in that high transpiration rate. But if it stays hot at night, like it did last summer, that plant just basically keeps sweating, if you think about it all night, kind of like we did last year too.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so that's just an increased use of water, stress on the plant that it's not putting into those bowls and resources. And I think if you look at last year, kind of our results, our bowls ended up being smaller, our seed count was lower, and a lot of our grades were lower because it couldn't put it into the development of that bowl because it was just trying to survive those temperatures.
Yeah, it's just like that plant has just only so much energy. And when it's spending all that energy trying to cool itself off 24/7, which is one reason why grapes do so well here, is because we have that desert type hot during the day and cool at night. Now, it was miserable. I remember that last summer thinking, this is so odd, because you could always go out after, sunset and walk, and it would be cool.
Oh, I tell people when I first started out here as the extension peanut specialist that I thought this was the greatest place in the world, because I grew up in Southwest Oklahoma and then worked off the Cap in Vernon. And and I got up here and I was like, it cools off at night, and in the morning you wake up and it's cool. And I said, and I got kind of blamed last year for bringing that weather with me when it ended up being like that.
Are you getting any of the not the blame, but the respect for bringing the rain?
I think a center director always takes the blame and none of the credit. So.
There you go. I drove through that part of Oklahoma that you're talking about on Sunday, coming back from visiting family, and what a beautiful part of the country, though. And even into Collingsworth County there, right as you cross over from Oklahoma into Texas, and just everywhere is so green.
Yeah,
I've been so surprised. And then we have recently also gone into New Mexico, and if it's green between Roswell, New Mexico, and Plains, Texas, it's had some rain.
and has been a good summer.
It has been a good summer.
Yes,
It
yes.
has been. It has been. So, what are things you think looking like then? The rain has been timely and helpful, and you feel like it's cooled off. And so, how's cotton looking?
Uh, I mean, I think a lot of our crops, especially on the station, and some of the crops that I've seen driving around, just look exceptional. The one concern I was telling somebody the other day, I had opportunity to fly in during the day, and there is some cotton out there that's got, when you get out over the top of it, that's got some skips in it. Mm-hmm. That obviously is going to create some concern. But, one of the great things about cotton and why we grow it in this, it has such an ability to compensate, both from stressful periods, skips, those mm-hmm. types of things. And so, mm-hmm. The hope is with the weather we had that it'll mm-hmm. compensate for some of those mm-hmm. issues. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure you remember, it was not a fun start to the season. No. It's been a great June and July, but the May to the first part of June was not fun at all.
Yeah. Well, and it seems like we never have a perfect season, but for people that don't know, cotton is part of the same family as hibiscus. And I don't know if anybody's noticed this year just how well hibiscus have done, which is one reason if you aren't planting a hardy hibiscus, you should have one in your yard because they just do so well here, and you can kind of see how it mimics some of that same traits of cotton, and you can tell this is why we grow cotton here.
Yes, most definitely. Mm-hmm. I think the crop's got a lot of promise. We still need some help to finish this thing out, but it's definitely a lot more positive than it's been the mm-hmm. last 3 years. And I guess I keep looking at it maybe a tough start and a great finish. So
yeah, that's a good way to put it. If it just doesn't rain all through harvest.
Yes, exactly.
So what kind of cotton research are y'all doing on the farm this year?
Oh, so we've got just a tremendous amount. I guess the first thing that's probably the most exciting for me for the center as the director is, so last year we put in approximately 20 acres of drip that we've got under research production this year. And then we're in the process of completing another 50 acres of drip that'll go into research for next year.
Great.
So that's an exciting, both from a research standpoint, a labor standpoint, and obviously, mm-hmm. Doing the benefits of saving as much water as we can for the mm-hmm. future of the center. Mm-hmm. So that's an exciting mm-hmm. part. I guess to kind of start, we've got a lot of fertility projects, cropping systems projects with three of our scientists, Katie Lewis, Joseph Burke, and Wayne Keeling. They've got that all the way from Lamesa to Lubbock to halfway, looking at various systems, how fertility impacts that. I attended yesterday. Katie and Joseph are part of a regenerative ag project. They're having a meeting yesterday, and it was neat because there's research scientists from throughout the state of Texas, also from Oklahoma and from Kansas that are part of that project.
Great.
And it's also neat because we had animal scientists, cropping systems people, extension people, some people that were doing some drone technology. Some modeling of those types of systems. So kind of as I introduced them, not only a diverse group from a geographical standpoint, but a diverse group from a scientific standpoint.
Yeah.
And that, to me, when you look at those types of systems, that's the same kind of mm-hmm. systems and decisions that growers are having to deal with. Mm-hmm. And mm-hmm. so seeing
Absolutely.
some of the neat information, Donna McAllister with Texas Tech, and Andrew Wright, who's at our center, doing some of the economic analysis.
I was about
of those
to ask.
Programs.
Oh, that's so great! I'm glad to hear that. And I think that you would think this wouldn't be. Why is this exciting? Well, so often a lot of research has been so siloed. You haven't gone cross-discipline all the time, or there haven't been as much farmer involvement, which is one of the things we love about NASA Acres, is that it's that farmer-led, what do you need type of question, And so I love to see that we're pulling in this holistic look at something that, regenerative kind of is this catchphrase now. It's kind of I don't know, it's this overarching term for things that maybe still need to be defined a little better, but I'm excited that for the fact that we need to know what the impacts are, because there's always going to be, consequences for everything that we do. And as much as we can figure out what the impacts are going to be, the better off we are.
Oh, most definitely. And obviously we all know part of that, a big part of that program, and we all realize the struggles we have with trying to manage cover crops in this region,
Right.
Compared to, especially as you get to the rain belt of the east. But then looking at, are there additional benefits, that possibly, can help us from other ways? And then obviously having the animal science part of that,
Yes.
Can we recruit some of that maybe lost yield that we have from that cover crop through introducing animal agriculture into that system?
And this is something that Lacey's been doing on her farm, and they did the research with Veronica Acosta Martinez at USDA research there on 4th, kind of across there from Tech, and they did soil, I think starting in 2017 when she introduced her cattle. So for people that aren't aware, this is not something that traditionally, and there has been some like fear of the mismanagement of running cattle on row crops has caused like compaction of the soil. And there's some issues that, the way it was managed didn't do a great job. But Lacey, she did a lot of that, what we would refer to maybe as mob grazing, where you're not leaving them there too long, and so they traced even the DNA of those microbes, and what they found, was just the increased in soil water moisture holding capacity as her health of her soil improved, so they were able to do cover crops when maybe you couldn't if you hadn't introduced cattle, plus also not having to pay for a synthetic fertilizer.
Yes. And of course, growing up in Southwest Oklahoma and working in the rolling plains, I'm used to, it's primarily cattle, but diverse cattle operations that kind of run the gamut. And that's part of the thing that I'm talking to some people out here that like I kind of just grew up with, just naturally thinking about, that people don't think about, is there's ways to introduce grazing to your system and you never own the cattle.
Oh, absolutely. And that's something, so when we were farming in Lamb County, that's something that we were introduced to in that area because it's common, much more common there. It's closer to feedlots than we were in Terry County. And so we just weren't as accustomed to seeing cattle used in any kind of rotation. But we had, some cowboys that were bringing their cattle out, and then still Brent Coker's our farmer out there that leases our great farmer, and just the decrease in input cost, and then the way that he manages the cattle, it brings in more income. It does.
Yeah. And so and there's just so many ways. It doesn't have to just be a stocker. It may be just giving somebody a short period for them to graze their heifers or their bred cows on. They've either maybe run out of forage where they're at, and they're looking for some place to hold these cattle till their place recovers or whatever. There's a whole gamut of things that can fall into that, and you never own the cattle. That doesn't mean you can't own the cattle, and there's not some potential benefits there.
Right. But if you don't want to mess with it, because a lot of times that's like the farmer and the cowman.
Yes. 100%.
Yeah. So, but it also, what I like about the idea too, is it also makes a pathway for maybe a younger person who wants to get into agriculture. They don't have to own the land. They can maybe work with a larger group of farmers and be a mutually beneficial. And then you got somebody that gets to stay behind and stay here and bring in that next generation.
Yeah, most definitely. And the cattle industry is, interesting from top to bottom. There's brokers out there that can help put cattle together for you. Guys that can help you find guys, like you were saying, that are looking for a place. So there's a lot of opportunities in that. The other thing you bring up, and it was kind of interesting when I started out, when some of the first no-till wheat went into the rolling plains. And that's one of those keys. You talk about compaction from the cattle and that sort of thing. And unfortunately, we learned some hard lessons through some of that.
Yeah.
But, the keys were, one, if it's wet, you pull the cattle off or you concentrate them into a smaller area. And then the second thing was making sure to leave enough forage at the end. Because, traditionally, if guys were going to plow that ground afterwards, people make fun of me, but I use the term that I grew up with was called lizard lick, where basically it looked like, there was basically not a blade of wheat out there when it was done.
Yeah.
And, but you plowed it so it broke up that compaction layer.
Right.
And we learned with no-till, you had to leave some of that.
Yes.
So you had to pull those cattle off a little earlier and let that grow back before it, died off in the summer, so that straw and that root mass would kind of help break up that compaction. And if you did those two things, you didn't see a real compaction issue from those cattle. So that, there's ways to manage, basically any system we talk about, there's ways to manage through some of those issues.
And I hope that people can see, that aren't involved in ag, that may be listening and they haven't turned us off by now. But how thoughtful you have to be in the process of what you're doing on your land, and even more so when you add in some of these more complex systems of production, that you really have to be. One thing is going to cause a consequence, and you're going to have to figure out how you're going to offset for that. And so I know a lot of people, I've heard people be, why don't farmers all farm regeneratively? And people don't understand the whole process, and it is a little frustrating to me sometimes to hear people make assumptions about that farmers are making bad choices, or choices that are impacting, urban people in a negative way because they don't care, and the truth is they do care. And so it's frustrating to me to say, you would go to another business owner and say, hey, we want you to do something so that you lose money every year because we think it's better for everybody.
Yeah, and that just doesn't work.
It makes sense, right?
Well, and I think, if you turn that around and kind of put that in whatever their situation is, they wouldn't be supportive of that either.
Well, let's just cut your salary down by 10% and see how that works, And so I hope that people will listen and we're talking about these things because ag impacts our economy so much. People don't recognize that, if you have a whole, I need to look to see what the impact, especially in Lubbock, is, that it's people can't buy new cars. People don't come in and spend money, buying nice clothes for school, going back to school, or, it's things that just are going to impact all of our businesses here in Lubbock.
Oh yeah. I have no idea how, it's called the hub city for a reason.
Yes.
I don't know how big an impact the outside communities have on exactly like you're saying on Lubbock, but a tremendous impact that when we're not profitable in the ag world impacts that, besides just those local communities that it impacts.
Definitely. Absolutely. Hey friends, I'm excited to tell you about NASA. NASA Acres, which is part of the Earth Science Division of NASA, is coming to our area. They're coming here because they want to learn about how we farm and they want to see if there's ways that they can help us. So NASA Acres is a project that we have been partnering with for several months now, and they will be here for ag tours October the 6th, 7th, and 8th. And we will be in Terry County. We will be heading then up to Crest and over to Morton. We're going to be in a lot of different places. We're going to put that agenda up on our website on the homepage so you can see where we are. And if you want to come by and just see what do they have to do with agriculture, we would love for you to meet these folks. They want to meet you. They want to talk about maybe how you can participate and have remote sensing information available for your farm. This is a farmer-led effort. So if you're an ag business, or if you're a farmer, come out and just kick the tires on what it might be like to partner with NASA on an ag project.
Growers, I always refer to them as the first environmentalist. They want to do things that are sustainable because, they want, yes, they want to make a profit this year, but they understand they need to make a profit 10 years from now also.
Exactly.
The other thing is, obviously, it's a tremendous economic benefit to the United States. I often wonder, because of the strength of agriculture and how we kind of take it for granted, how many other things can we do because we're so successful in agriculture? I think it's less than 10% are directly involved in ag now.
Yes.
If we weren't as successful at that, that would have to be a higher percentage.
Well, and for people to understand too that, we had some farmers here from Poland just recently, and they were expressed a little bit of surprise about how much they're ahead of us in innovation. But half of their farm equipment is subsidized by the EU. So when you're talking about, or even like buildings, so like one of them in particular, they just built the equivalent of like a $500,000 storage, and the EU paid for $250,000 of that. Now it required a lot of paperwork, but it was worth them hiring someone to do that paperwork for a couple of years. And so that is not something that we have here.
No.
We do not have that. We have crop insurance, and so that does help recover from loss, but you do not have the investment of the government of the United States in developing a lot of this innovation, or saying, hey, we're going to cover half of the cost of that $1 million cotton stripper. That's you're not on the real even playing field, And at the same time, to that end, of course they have wonderful soil there. They're in some cases, their yields versus yields where we are like 17 times, but their prices are higher too. What they're getting paid for their commodities, and so we are definitely in a different position than a lot of other countries, are. And so, it's kind of on the back, has kind of been the burden of a lot of this innovation and, progress has been on the back of the grower. And that's why AgriLife is so important.
Oh, yeah. And I think for a lot of reasons, obviously as the increased cost to be able to farm, everything that we can do to help make sure as many of those decisions have some information to assist with that. Because, I think we've learned, especially in the, I'd say the new world, information is so valuable.
Yes.
And I, I think even looking back to me, even as a young scientist and extension person, a lot of that I think I took for granted. But and that's probably been an interesting thing in my career, is how that information level has changed.
Yes, and it's almost like though there's too many avenues. You don't know which one to pick. You used to pick up the newspaper, and that's all you needed. And it's so not that way anymore. I was thinking about an event that happened in April for the partner of ours. I didn't find out until yesterday. And I thought, what do I need to do to stay on top of this? And I realized I need to read about 25 or 30 newsletters a week. And that is a lot of time.
Oh, well, and
you just can't.
And I kind of had this conversation with my daughter the other day. We both suffer from ADD.
Same.
And exactly what you're talking about. When I was her age, say something would pop in your head. You'd either have to go to encyclopedia or go to the library.
Yeah, and if you have ADD, something pops in your head all the time.
Yes,
That's why I have all
and
these
now you
notes.
have an automatic outlet for
Yes.
that thought.
Yes.
And so it's a lot easier, I
Right.
would say, for it to be more severe for that generation than it was the generation. I used to think
Yes.
it was just my parents made me non-ADD,
Yes.
but it was really you didn't have that
You just didn't
instant
have it. You didn't. Yeah.
access.
Well, and I think of ADD as kind of like a superpower or a kryptonite. It just depends on how how you use it, but we have the tools now that
Yeah.
we didn't, you and I didn't have growing up. You just like got put in the class with the kids that were, you know what I mean? Like you just were slow and you just couldn't keep up, you know what I mean? When really your brain was working about 10 times faster than everybody else's.
Yes, exactly.
So you just, it is an interesting way of life.
And so I think part of our job in research also is as much information as there is out there, there's a lot of it that's not good information.
Oh, it's so true.
I've heard
Yes,
so many
that's so
stories
true. Yeah.
lately about, a lot of the AI technology,
Oh my goodness. Yes,
and you
yes,
end up,
yes, yes.
and of course I'm a weed scientist by training. So I hear the stories about, a guy types in an AI and gets recommended a herbicide that's not even labeled for that crop and could
Yes.
potentially kill the crop.
Right.
So-
Yes.
so,
Right. Well, and and I think that's one reason why, because it's not going to go away. And it, to me, is the same thing as ADD. It can be a superpower, or if you don't know what it's not capable of, it's kryptonite, because it will hallucinate, is what they say, and it'll just make something up.
Yes, exactly. So while we're getting bombarded for information, I think our help is to help producers work through some of that information.
So do you guys have a newsletter that people can add to their daily reading? Or some kind of way? How do you get your information out to the farmer?
A lot of ours is done directly. We have meetings throughout the year
Yes.
that a big percentage of my faculty participate in. So a lot of it's through, or I guess maybe I would say the initial introduction is
Right.
through those types of systems.
Right.
I mean, a lot of our scientists do put one pagers together that oftentimes they pass out at those types of
Right.
meetings.
Right.
And then for me, and I think for a lot of us, then you develop that one-on-one
Yes.
relationship with that producer. And then, he calls you. The other great thing about the system that we're in, and I would say that Texas extension has stayed strong. We have county agents in every one of the counties.
Right.
So
Right.
obviously they're available. And as I tell people, you can contact them, and if you're not for sure, then they can help you get in contact with one of us that can help you. So,
Right.
so in a lot of ways, I guess we're still old fashioned
Yes.
in the ways
Yeah.
that we
Right.
interact with people.
Right. But that to me is the strength of, and that's something I think that we have lost for a couple of decades, and going back to that, this is someone that I can trust, and I love that about extension. That's what I love about NASA Acres, is its relationship type, of development. And I think even as we've had, when I grew up, your county agent stayed there his career, and as people move around more, you don't have the time, and so you be able to connect those researchers that, like Katie Lewis, she's lived here forever, you know what I mean? So there's people that, people can know and trust to get that information from.
Yeah. And the key, and I think the reason we've been successful, and I guess when people could argue with me or whatever, but we're one of the, if not the only, one of the only non-biased
Right.
sources of information.
Right.
Everybody else, has some kind of I guess chip in the game per se.
Right. Well, and that's why it's important for AgriLife to be funded. Because if you don't get the funding that you need, and you have to go to different organizations to get that funding, then it calls into question. So I mean, that's why I would say, like, it's a very important thing for us to be able to fund AgriLife in a way that you get to maintain that, hey, because I think you're willing to say, yes, this works or no, it works. Doesn't matter who funds it.
Yes,
right.
Exactly.
But it really keeps that level of, removing that question from the table when you get to provide that, research.
No, and a couple of areas that I think about from that standpoint, we've got several faculty members, Wayne Keeling, Pete Dautre, Ken Leger, that are working on a lot of the new technologies in cotton. The one I think about is the Accent Flex, which is going to have it's been developed to allow basically a corn herbicide to be applied pre-emergence on cotton.
Okay.
Hopefully it will be out next year.
Okay, so I'm just going to repeat that for the layman. That means you got something that can kill your weeds before your cotton comes up. You can put this out, but normally it's been used on corn, but you now can use it and it won't impact it's not going to kill your cotton seed.
Exactly.
So your cotton can grow through that, and that prevents, and for people that are concerned about the use of chemicals, when you are able to create something that is so, it's got a high purity rate and it is so effective, you use less of it.
Yes, and I mean, this year's a prime example. With all the rain we had, you might end up having to retreat 2 or 3 times, where having something like this technology up front gives you a better window to make sure that post application is timely. And so they're looking at the best ways to use it, and in some cases, not, maybe even this doesn't fit this situation as well. Right. Or if this is what you're doing, this may not necessarily be the name. I think about, like as you move into corn country where growers are using those already in corn, they may not want to use that technology as much because it's so important for them on corn. As we get south where we're not growing corn, this is going to be a herbicide that's probably never been on that land before.
Right.
Which is tremendous.
Yeah. Because what happens is that actually plants are smart.
They're
very smart, and they evolve. They go, ooh, that we can figure out. They become resistant to chemicals.
Yes.
And so it's important to continue to research. But I mean, and I think that that's something that people need to understand too, that are concerned about GMOs. And at some point, I'm going to have a GMO specialist on here so we can really dig into that, because the truth is that plants are doing this in nature all the time. What they're doing in the lab, they're cross, genetic, even, like they're just saying, hey, that's a good idea. I'll take that idea from this plant and put it in this plant.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of people are concerned about, foreign DNA.
Yeah, DNA. Yes.
Because that's where GMOs are created from. But just like you said, in nature, that's happening.
It does happen.
Even from traditional breeding. Yeah. Triticale.
Exactly.
Is
good
a
example.
Man-made cross of wheat and rye.
Yes.
So, both of those plants together are foreign DNA for each other.
Well, and a lot of vegetables that we eat, they're man-made. They were not original. I think broccoli. Be nice to have a list of those kind of vegetables that people are, things that people are eating and accustomed to, and then see them as good for them, that were actually 2 separate species of plants that were combined.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. So, so, Tangellos.
Yeah, good. Yeah, there you go.
So yeah,
right.
So
yes.
So there's a lot of those things like that.
Yeah.
That when you think of it that way, and it's been such a tremendous benefit to us. We've gotten through a lot of issues. People that remember before BT cotton and how bad bollworms and budworms were, and were resistant to chemicals, and how many times we were having to spray for those.
Yes. Hey friends, here on the High Plains, we have got a chance to work with NASA's Develop project. The focus is cover crops, using satellite tools to identify things like when they were planted and how they're managed, and how can we build real research to see what value they bring or maybe they don't bring. So if you're a farmer, you're planting cover crops, we'd love your help. A short form will be sent to you with some basic information like your planting date, termination date, maybe the years that you had cover crops. Your information is going to stay protected, but it'll make a really big difference in showing what cover crops are really worth having in our region. If you want more information, want to be part of this, you can visit sarah-conservation.com. We'll have some information there. And you can also reach out to me at contact sarah-conservation.com, and I would be happy to put your name on the list. Thank you very much. You know, there was a report that came out last year. We were at a conference and a woman wrote a report, on how dirty the cotton industry is. And particularly, she mentioned to me how our area, and I thought to myself, you have no idea what it was like and where we are now.
Oh,
We have made so much progress in the reduction and the safety of chemicals that it's astounding to me, even from the time I was young, and I think, everything, like I've said multiple times, has a consequence. And so some of those production methods have brought, I think, along with them cultural changes, and good or bad, they're there, And so I think that going back to what we were discussing, what I think started this rabbit trail was the meeting that you had where you have all these researchers from all these different disciplines in the room to look at every impact. I think that is so, so beneficial.
Oh yeah, and that was the other part that I was going to say. So a lot of the things and that's a good group to kind of transfer into this discussion, is a lot of the things they're working on. I guess you would say maybe don't, from a corporation standpoint, don't have a sellable benefit. Mm-hmm. So if we didn't have these land grant systems to look into those questions, there's not a corporation that's going to look into.
Exactly. Yeah. Because they're not going to spend money on research that they're not going to make money from.
Exactly.
Yeah. Such a good point. That's such a good point. The benefit is always about the producer.
Yes.
That's what you're looking at.
Yeah. And obviously, with that regenerative ag program, a lot of that's looking at organic matter, carbon sequestering, some of that stuff. Mm-hmm. And even though there are some groups trying to look at ways to monetize carbon benefits, they're not paying for this research either. Mm-hmm. So again, for us to be able to benefit possibly in that in the future, we need this kind of research.
Well, and it's very important for farmers to know the value of what they have.
Yes.
And because what you're looking at is someone else coming to you that wants to purchase from you. They want to tell you what the value is. And we have let industry set our pricing for a long time. This is an opportunity for the farmer to set that value.
Right. And the other thing, and I think we probably talked about this a little time on the last podcast, I had a grower visit with me several years ago, and we'll see it, as government programs change and adapt based on the current administration.
Of course.
There's, we're going to see different programs. And he made the point to me that I had never really thought of in this way. He said, Todd, we need your guys' help to tell us what works and what doesn't work. And what he meant was, I think, let's say the government's going to give me $5 for this practice. Mm-hmm. If it costs me $3, that's a benefit, or it increases my yield. But if it costs me yield, or it costs me $10, and they're only going to pay me $5, and we need you to help us answer that before I make that mistake.
Yeah, something I'm seeing through, a lot of people know that there are a lot of banned words, right, that you can't use right now. So there's a lot of politically correctness right now. It's kind of strange that it's happening the way it is. But what I've seen is a lot of industry, because so many of our, end buyers, they're international corporations. And so they're not as much in flux on what their requirements are for their products, right? And so what I'm seeing is this like where like maybe the government isn't going to pay for it or doesn't want to have anything to do with it. They're not going to enforce it. Well, these companies still need it. And so to me, this is a really kind of a good way for a farmer to break away from some federal programs that might be based on some of these things that, depending on what party's in control, they like it or don't, but there's still a market for it. And so there's, in fact, we're recording today a podcast with a guy in Canada who has set up a system for farmers to create their own type of, here's what we can offer you. And they're doing a direct, there's nobody in between. And he said, to me, it almost looks like our stormwater conservation districts, very farmer-led, farmer-focused. But there's the contracts are short-term. They can get out of them. There's so many more benefits for them because they're almost like these no strings attached payments for practices. And I think that bringing those kind of ideas into agriculture so that we're less dependent on, what the whim of the government is at the moment.
Oh yeah. No, and you hear a lot of times about different situations like you're describing. The other thing is, I don't know where we're going to end up on it, but there's been some push about marketing either certain commodities or certain practices along with those commodities to specific buyers. And again, I think that's where we can play a role in the land grant system just the same way.
Well,
this is what you need if you're going to follow these practices.
And that would be fabulous because, so Lacey is, J. Crew Madewell pays for her. They pay a premium for so many bales a year, whether they buy them or not. Somebody else can buy them, but she's going to get paid from them. It's very worthwhile, but you have these verification bodies that are coming in and doing what I believe AgriLife could do, especially if you bring in the help of NASA, where you have all the remote sensing data. What do you want to know that needs to be certified? We can certify it for you. And then you aren't winding up the buyers paying this in this certification body and the farmers paying them. That's a frustration to me. That's another way that the supply chain gets plugged up with, people in the middle.
Yes. Well, and unfortunately in agriculture, it seemed like whatever we talk about, you have those struggles.
Yes.
You definitely have the struggles with, I guess, what we term the middle-man.
Yes, right.
And how we get around that. I'm not smart enough to have that answer.
I think I think that we're living in a day and age where it can happen. And I know what Lacey's seen is a lot of the mills are like, we want to work with you. How can we work directly with the farmer? And then that benefits our local cooperative, PCCA, that they're like, well, hey, if you buy from here, you are working with the farmer because that's who we are.
Yes.
It's a big organization, but we created it years ago so that we could do what you're asking for,
Yeah, and I think we all want it to happen faster than it ever does.
Exactly.
I was well, there were several things that I was hoping that would be a benefit coming out of COVID. At the time, I was hoping we were making people more aware of their food source, the importance of their food source. The part we didn't even talk about that I've said for probably 20 plus years is that agriculture in the United States is the key to our national security.
Absolutely.
It's not defense. And not to say defense is not important, but
I completely agree. Yes. Go ahead.
The reason is because we've never had to worry about where our food comes from. And even if we had to cut some things off because of whatever reason, negotiations with the company, war, or whatever, we can still feed ourselves.
Yes.
We may not be able to get the diversity we'd like or that sort of thing, but we're not going to go hungry as a nation. And that has been a tremendous benefit that I don't think we talk enough about.
No, and I don't think, and this is, I mean, I know that this is probably controversial, but we spend a lot of money on defense. But really, that front line of defenses, if an army moves on its stomach, how can we? I mean, to me, it is the foundation for defense, and so it would be interesting to me to see maybe some money from defense needs to go to our food system and making sure that we're shoring up every region so that were something to happen, we are immediately able to, take care of, the people right in our region,
Oh yeah. And like I said, I go back to COVID and while that wasn't a fun time, we were able to move through it because we did have, we may have not thought it was a consistent food supply, but when you really think about it, it was a consistent food supply through that system.
Well, and I know it did force some folks. I know that there's some folks that I've met here that moved from another state where they were like, hey, Walmart, their whole refrigerator freezer section was just turned off because it wasn't there. And so they ended up, renting some land and, we're never doing this again, And so I think that, we're fortunate where we are because we have, we got a lot around us, and it's just second nature. But people that live in the cities, that's we need to continue to educate and make people aware. I'd love for us to have a Lubbock County farm tour every year and let people from our, that are living in Lubbock to get on a bus and, hey, let's take you out and let's show you what's happening and why this impacts you. And, and I think people care. They want to know, they want to know. And I think it'd be a great opportunity for us to showcase what we do.
No. And so I guess, part of that came out of that. I mean, we all hear every day some type of advertisement about, locally owned.
Yes,
it seems to especially be in the animal market more so.
Yes.
But all these opportunities, that you can buy somewhat direct from the farm.
Right.
Like I said, I was hoping there would be a continued push for that. I think we have short-term memories as Americans.
Well, and it's interesting. So a plug for one of the people that we just love, and that's Frontier Market in Plainview. And I think it has a lot to do with the culture, and the difference in the response of people in the Canyon and Amarillo area. They will have a 45-minute waiting line till they sell out. And in some instances, they're not even coming to Lubbock anymore because the demand's not here, And so it's interesting to me that microcultural differences and what creates that demand. And if people don't know about Frontier Market, so they're a great organization. They're a great family-owned company. And we have some podcasts not far back with them, with Leighton. So find them on Facebook, Frontier Market out of Plainview. Great. They're growing some strawberries and all kinds. And then now they have a storefront. So it's a great, but we've got to educate, how do we make that cultural shift here in Lubbock to where people value that and are willing to, make the extra effort not to go into United.
No, and I think that's a good point. We're kind of circling back to, that benefits the whole local economy.
It does.
Much more so than buying strawberries from Mexico.
Absolutely, it does.
100%.
Yes. Yeah.
But I guess the other thing, like I said, we always want it to move faster than it did. But you hope, that in the future, that will hopefully open up some opportunities for cotton to be the same way, like you were saying with the J. Crew and with Lacey.
Absolutely.
That those types of opportunities will continue to increase in the next 5 or 10 years.
Exactly. Well, we haven't gotten very far on research. So you're going to have to come back.
Yes, ma'am.
And we'll talk, because I know you guys are doing some produced water, which we are all about the produced water around here and how we can utilize that. And I know you guys are doing some research on that, I'd love to hear about that. And, other things. There are a lot of other crops around here besides cotton. We are the cotton capital of the world for sure, but we do have a lot of other, and we're seeing,
yes,
a return to grassland and a lot of things. So I'd love to hear some more about that. But I really appreciate you coming in and joining us, and we'll get something back on the books and get you back.
Yeah, I probably just need to pick one topic at a time and see where
Well,
we go from there.
I think we did, but then we have a lot to talk about, and I love for you to be here because part of really our goal is to have a really nice mix of like, hey, a farmer's going to get something from this, but I hope that people that are living in town and never been around farms can pick up something and learn something, about where their clothes. Hopefully they're wearing natural fibers.
Yes, ma'am.
It's way better for your body and it's way better for the environment. So hopefully this will give them some new information, that will help them make some good choices. So friends, thanks for joining us again. And Todd, you guys have a website for
yeah, I believe it's
wonder if it's
Lubbock.tamu.edu.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll put that in the show notes too, so people can go there and see. And we'll also put your contact information, and folks can give you a text or a call, if they've got questions. And, like we've said before, the extension isn't just for people that are farming, it's for every citizen in Texas. And if you have a question about pretty much anything, AgriLife is there to help. So check out AgriLife, check out Frontier Market, our friends there in Plainview. And I hope that you will join us again for another episode of Conservation Stories.